Hello, everybody. My name is KGreen829, and I am part of the Simulation Sports Network community. For the past couple of seasons, I've been using this sheet over here to track stats and records for all of my college football games. And recently, I've been seeing more people, make their own versions of these and do it for themselves. And with this new, with so many people now going in and making their own, I think it's only makes sense for me to make pretty much a whole comprehensive guide on everything you would need to know if you're wanting to make your own or even just interact with these. If you want to look at somebody's stats if they're using one of these. So this is going to go over pretty much everything you need to know, just from how to interact with it, how everything works, how to make your own version, and how to update it from year to year, because you need to do a little bit of work to have it work the way it's designed, from year to year. But we'll get to that. We're going to start off, of course, with just going through the entire sheet and looking at how everything works. Um, we're going to start off with the raw individual. This is very much, it's very self-explanatory. It's very much, and it's the natural starting point. This is just where you put all the stats, all your box scores. So what you do is game, and I'll probably go over this part again, but for each game, starting from one, and each, you put the game ID. So, first game you've ever played is game one, and it's just, game two, game three. It's not that complicated. Then you put the season that the game occurred, who you played, the name of the player, their position, and you fill out pretty much their stats for the game. The majority of these stats are just found in the box score. Completion percentage and anything in this yellow highlight is calculated by itself. The yellow highlight pretty much just means that you leave that blank and it calculates itself. But as I was saying, everything pretty much almost all of these stats are just found in the box score itself. For pancakes and sacks allowed, you have to go into the statistics and go to the starts on week to get that. In defensive touchdowns, I don't know if it's being tracked correctly on the interface or not, but that's not tracked in the box score. But if you add, when you get to the raw team, it adds up all the points and gives you what your score is. And if that score happens to be off by 6, there's probably a defensive touchdown somewhere in there, and you can go to the play-by-play and find that pretty easily. If you just search up touchdown, you don't have to search through too many, and you'll find one from your defense. And the only other thing that's a little bit more complicated is pass deflections. I don't think they were tracked for the first season, and I don't know how long it took into the second season for them to be tracked. But I don't think they were tracked the whole time. So I have them here. I have one against Houston, which was my 21st game. And but I don't have many, if any, before that. So at some point they started being tracked. For punts too, punting yards is not something that's tracked in the box score right now. So what I do is I go to a game. So this is UCLA versus Tulane. This is my week 3 game. I go into here, and I know the name of my punter. His name is Richard Biggins. So I just type in, and I search Biggins. I see, and it takes me to all his punts. And this, as far as I know, is accurate. That's how far the punt traveled. That's how far the punt traveled from, the line of scrimmage to, wherever the ball was caught or went out of bounds or anything. So I just take that and I add up all these numbers. So 55 yards there, 43 there, 51 there. And I put the final result here. That's how I get punt yards. Like I said, this whole page is very self-explanatory. Under each, time sacked, how many times was your quarterback sacked? How many passing yards did he have? How many touchdowns did he throw? How many interceptions did he throw? The only other thing Everything there is very self-explanatory. It's just, grab it from the box score, other than the ones I mentioned, is total points here. This is just, you know, the raw number of points they scored. So, you get 6 points for a touchdown. And against UCLA, my quarterback threw for 2 touchdowns. He has 12 points. And in this hidden one, we have hidden total points. You're not going to have to worry about this at all. The only thing with this is when I'm counting total points, obviously, quarterback gets 6 points for a touchdown and a receiver gets 6 points for a touchdown. But the team only gets 6 points. They don't get both of those, 12 combined. So in hidden total points, it's pretty much just total points, but it's not counting receiving touchdowns. And that's how it calculates how many points we scored in a game. So it goes through there. Because if I was just using this, then every passing touchdown would be counted for double. But like I said, you're not going to have to worry about that too much. So that's about it for the raw individual page. Like I said, very self-explanatory, but it's like this is the sheet. It takes all the information, and without this, there is no sheet, there is no stats, and very much the same way for the raw team. Raw team is very, you don't have to do as much. So with this, it automatically, as soon as you put in a new game ID for a new game, it'll automatically add it to the raw team. So if I were to go over here and 58th game, 2020 in 2025, and Temple. That's my next game. I were to do that, I go over here, it automatically put in the game. It automatically calculates our score. We just got to give it a little bit of time to load. There, it automatically calculates what season it was. It already puts in, and what team we played. You have to put in the opponent's score. So this game hasn't happened yet, so I can't put in an accurate score, but let's say Temple scored 23 points. And once I fill in all my stats for here, this will update and show my score. You also have to put in their yards for tracking. So let's say they had 237 passing yards and 184 rushing yards. So we put that in, it automatically calculates the total yards. And that's all you have to do for the raw team. The rest of it is just auto-filled from the raw individuals. So right now it's empty because there are no stats. But if I were to say Paul McCullers Sanders, my quarterback, and I was able to go just get the formatting right there. There you go. I put in, say, went 12 for 18, whatever. Sacked 2 times, threw for 234 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So once I've populated that with some stats, it will automatically fill them in. So it's just got to load. It takes a little bit of time, but it's not gonna populate it with something that hasn't been there. So I don't have anything for rushing yards or rushing attempts, so none of that's gonna fill in. But as you fill this in, all of these will autofill. These will autofill in for for there. So again, for raw team, you just gotta put your opponent score, how many passing yards and how many rushing yards they had. Everything else gets done by itself. So delete this here. So with that, I think it's a good time to we'll go to records. So when you're keeping all these stats, it's very natural that you're going to have the information of all of these different records. How many points was the most points we've ever scored? So we've ever scored, and we can see here in 2024, I scored 62 points against Charlotte. That's the most points scored in Tulane history. So this is the team record. So this is pulling from here only. So I got to get rid of these. So it goes in and it looks at this one is team records. So it's not going to look at individual. It's going to look at teams. So and it's just pulling all of the stuff from here. And again, all of the stats that are here is just pulling from the raw individual. So really, it all comes back to here. But again, these are team stats, for a game. So it's just looking and it's taking the numbers. So it's like if I had two quarterbacks, throw, one might have thrown 41, one might have thrown 40. In team, they're 81. This isn't anything new. We all know how football works. We all know how team stats works. But, for sake of just having it, it's better to explain it. So yeah, this has all of our stats, and I have it so that if it has a blue background in these, that means it was set in the past game. So in my last game, you can see I took 5 sacks, which is tied for the 6th most sacks I've taken in sim history. We had 2 deflections, which is tied for the 5th most deflections in history, and 2 pancakes, which is tied for the 2nd most pancakes in team history in a game. Then we go over to individual game records. This is the same thing, but instead of the team, this is just the individual players. So, you see most rushing attempts in a game, 38, but the most rushing attempts a single player has had in a game was 28 by Haloti Thomas, and that was in 2022 against Florida State. So, exact same thing. Background, if I have that blue background there, that means it was set in the last game. You see Kevin Robles, 11 tackles. That's tied for the 3rd most tackles in a game in school history. So, again, very much just same thing. We know how records are, done. You get the most of something, you get the record for the game. And, very much the same. It's just pulling from raw individual here. Just pulling from this sheet. And for these ones, the team records and the game records, it's just a simple sort. You're just looking. I use a query for it, but it's just really just sorting it by, points. Everything is its own. Each line is its own thing here. So it's like, since it's individual game, it doesn't have to do any math. If it looks in here, it sees say 281 passing yards. It doesn't have to add anything to that. That's just what it is. So it doesn't have to. So it goes 281 passing yards. That's nowhere near the most passing yards that they've had in a game. That's nowhere near the most passing yards they have in a game. It's over here. So, that's just not included. But like I said, it's a very simple sort. It doesn't have to do any complex math because each row is its own game. Now, where that changes a little bit is here with the season records. So with this, again, I have this blue background. That means that it's, it says active player. I got to change that later. This is for records that are currently happening. So the current season, right? So, as you can see, Jason Ellis was 10th, was the 10th quarterback ever to throw a pass in a season for Tulane. So his one passing attempt is the 10th most passing attempts ever, but that's in this season right now. So that's highlighted blue, and it's very much the same thing as individual game records, but there's a bit of math that goes into it. So you can feel free to skip ahead a little bit, but pretty much what it's doing here is it's adding up every single stat in that category for that one player over the course of a whole season. So the way that it designates that is it's pretty much just looking for every single time that the season, which is that the column with the season is the same, and the column of the name are exactly equal to each other. So if you spell the name a little bit wrong, it's going to throw this off. because it can't recognize that you're talking about the same guy. Like if it's spelled slightly different, and it's in its brain, in quotation marks, it's a completely different player. But all the names are spelled correctly every single time. What it'll do is it'll add up every single stat in that category for a player with that name during that one season, and it'll put it here, and you can see it's it does its job. I have season stats also in not in team records, but in individual game records and season records, and in the next one we're going to get to in career records. I have these I have these yards per stats, and these are actually fun because what you can do is you can mess around with it. So if you go over to here, the minimum qualifier, and you see most yards per completion, minimum 10 completions, I can drop that down to one completion, and that goes, you see with 10, it only five quarterbacks qualify for that. Only five quarterbacks have thrown 10 passes in a season, or have had 10 completions in a season. But if I get that down to one, you now see that there's 8 quarterbacks that have done it, and it brings it up. But it's very much like you can mess with it and set the qualifiers. I have it set at 10, which I think is, for now, just just enough. You obviously you could set it higher, but the numbers are kind of just placeholders for now. You can go around and you can mess with that, not just as somebody who owns the sheet, but if you are viewing it. Um, uh, I'm not 100% sure how this changes when somebody else does it, and I don't have edit access. But if it just copies that completely, then you could be able to go in and be like, well, I want to see what happens if I bump this up to minimum of 100 targets. Well, you go there, and you look, and you see not too many people have had a minimum of 100 targets in a season. So you have Russell Coleman, who had 4.86 yards per target. But if you drop that down, or drop that back down to 40 is where I had it. You see William Henry comes in. He has not had 100 targets this season, but he's had somewhere between 40 and 100. So he shows up on here and raises that to a bit more of a competitive thing. You don't just get in if you've had 100 targets. So I think that's cool. And then finally, the final career, or the final record sheet is career records. And the blue background just means they're an active player. They currently are playing for the team. And all of this, it just does it. So the season, it checks if it's in the season by going through and checking against this right here, because this is the current season, 2025. Anything that has that season gets highlighted blue. Anyone that has played in the current season is highlighted blue here. Any record that was set in the last game, so it just looks for the last game that was played, in this one in team record, which if you look is game 57. So anything with a 57 as the game will get set to blue for currently happening. Career records is very similar to season records with the math you got to do. You got to add up all the stats. But instead of season records where it was just checking for the one individual season, this does a little bit less math, and it's only looking at every single stat and adding up every single stat in that category for the entire career. It's not just limiting it to the one season. So, as you can see, the sim is still relatively new. I've only had 6 quarterbacks ever, so that's not as filled out. But if you look at a position, stats for, say, wide receiver, where you have multiple guys, it's filled out a bit more. Still, we're in, what is it? This is the 5th season. Yeah, this is the 5th season, so it's still not too much. And obviously, as I have guys, going, Jeffrey Bethelier is creeping up on those records in his third season. So, very early, since it's very early in the sim, you're likely to see, you know, these records, especially the career records, break really easily. But that's just in any new team. Whenever you're first setting up records, and you're just starting to get into it, your records are going to get broken, very quickly. Just as you get better players and as time goes on. And since the records haven't stood for that long and aren't super, huge records because of how little time it took to set them and all that stuff, they're easy to break. But again, that's very, that has nothing to do with the sheet. That's just how things are. So now this is the landing page that I used for this site, for the sheet. This is pretty much just the you know general information about the team. You have the points, how many points scored, points allowed, point differential, passing, rushing, and total touchdowns, passing, rushing, total yards, sacks taken, pancakes, pass deflections, field goals made, attempted, field goal percentage, tackles, TFLs, sacks, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, interceptions. Wins on a career, losses, winning percentage. This is all just, for you know, the entire run of the sim. For as I have this going back to the first game that I've played, which was the first game in this sim. So this is the stats for the whole sim. But what you can do is you can say, oh, and by the way, all of this stuff automatically grabs it all. So the wins and losses automatically update. The only things here that you'll have to change is you're going to change this obviously to your own conference, and you got to change these records. And you can even add one, in between the bowl game record and the national championship record, and put your playoff record. This is very much low tech kind of thing. So you can very easy to change that stuff. You just have to unmerge this like that, move that down, move this one down one, and then put in playoff record, and then reset your borders. But I haven't made the playoffs, so I'm not going to do that just yet. But what you can do here is you can change it, and say you just want to look at the stats from all of your conference games. Well, here it is. You click this drop down, and you get a conference games. I've got a 16-2 record in conference. This is my point differential. These are all my stats. And non-conference games, same thing. Here's my win-loss record. Here's my point differential, all my stats. And down here, we have team stats against individual teams. These are my stats against Air Force. We're 1-1 against them. Scored 65 points, allowed 35. So we got a plus 30 point differential. And those are our stats. Again, you can go to the drop down. And this is pulling from a list that I'll get into later. You can switch and you can look at Pittsburgh. We're 1-0 against Pittsburgh. Beat them 39-6. So we have a plus 33 point differential. And it's, I don't know. I think it's very cool. And then over here, you have players. So this is, before it's very hard to see, an individual stats for a career, but this is what that's for. So these are, the total stats of the team. These are the total stats of the players ever. So this is Paul McCullers Sanders. This is my current quarterback. See, he's played 30 games. These are his stats in his career. Say you want to see how he's done in conference games. Well, you can do that. He's played 17 games in conference. Those are his stats. In non-conference, he's played 13 games, and those are his stats. And down here, we have the same thing, but for these are for individual opponents. So, Fernando Thomas, he's played 2 games against Air Force. These are the stats that he's put up when he's played Air Force. He hasn't played Charlotte. I gotta fix an error there, but he hasn't played Charlotte. So we're gonna go to Haloti Thomas, who has. He's played one game. These are his stats from that one game against Charlotte. You know, it's very much, you know, so not only can you go and you can see their career stats, but you can see their career stats against certain opponents. And if we go into the back end here for a little bit, you'll see how that kind of works out. I have the main thing. The main thing that's fun about this is this entire thing is very. It's a bit complicated. So pretty much, I wanted to find a way so that I could display their stats, but you know, if you look at Aaron White, he's a linebacker. He hasn't, if you go to Paul McCullers Sanders, who's my quarterback, he's over here. He's thrown passes, but if you go to an offensive linebacker like Aaron White, you go to a running back like Alexi Patterson, or you go to a kicker like Adam Edwards. That's something that I'm gonna have to fix, but I'll get there. There's a couple of things I gotta fix, so that's my bad. But it's nice I'm catching them now. They have not thrown a pass in their career, so with limited space, because I don't want this, going there. How can I make it so that these stats that aren't important to these players are not shown? Um, so pretty much what it is I take this one, and we have all of the stats that can be shown in here. And basically what it does is it's like a giant, it's very messy code. You're going to see that very quickly. But it's pretty much just a giant if a giant if iteration. So it goes in here and it checks if there's stats recorded for a 10. And I think that's pass completions. So it goes over here. A10. Yeah, pass is completed. No. So it goes to the next one. And it pretty much does that. It does it all the way through for each of these lines so that it only displays stats that are relevant to the current player. So Alexi Patterson's not going to, it's not going to show, he's thrown how many completions because he hasn't thrown any completions. So, and same thing with this, the team all-time stats, it's the same exact thing, except it has the extra, it has the extra qualifier of it has to be against this specific team. And then you go to season stats and, same exact thing. The only difference with season stats is you have an extra little drop down here. And you can change the season. So I can go to 2022. In 2022, I was 10-4. Paul McCullers Sanders was not my quarterback that year. So if I go to my quarterback, Bronson Morrow, there you see the same exact thing. You go to 2023, Bronson Morrow had graduated. So you bring in Paul McCullers Sanders. I was 7-6 in 2023. These are my stats. And again, this is how conference play went for us. This is how we did in non-conference. And again, down here, Army, what do we look like against Memphis? So, I'm seeing some more stuff that I'm going to have to fix, but I'll get to that later before I post this video. So by the time this video is out, that'll all be fixed. And then again, just like with all-time stats, it's got it all here. These are usually hidden though, so I'm going to go ahead and re-hide these. So that's not something that's even seen. So, and this, if you want to access it, you don't need to. There's no reason to, but you press this little button over here. These three lines, you grab it. The grayed out ones are the ones that are hidden. People that don't have edit access will not be able to go in here and grab those. So you don't have to worry about it. And the last part is the dump. And this is pretty much where the majority of the back end takes place. So with here, these are the teams that we've played that are selected in the all-time stats. So if we were to go to conference games, it would only display teams in our conference. This is the same thing, but for season stats. Now, this is every single team that has been played. And it pretty much just pulls every unique name, uses the function unique. It pulls every unique name from the raw team. And so it just has that. This is the conference. So it takes this and it here under your conference, you pretty much just put in what your conference is. And conference, what it does is it takes this played teams, and it only shows teams that also are displayed in this your conference column. Out of conference, it just does the opposite. It only displays teams that are not shown in this your conference column. Here is a list of every single player that has ever played for Tulane in alphabetical order and their position. And this is just another thing that gets pulled. So it pulls from here so that it could look at, it and give the positions here. These are every single season that has been played, and it's another unique function, and it just pulls out every single new number in the raw team in the year column. These are the season selected and the season stats, and the current season according to the all-time stats. You don't have to worry about these. These are just here so that they can be added to it later. These are translated to text and then added together and then used to call these. So you don't have to know how this works, but pretty much it takes this and indirect M2. So it's taking year 2023, which is right here. I have that as I think it's called, yeah, I have it as a named range. And I'll go into this a little bit more when I get into updating your sheet. But pretty much, it translates the number here into a text. It adds it to the year. And since the name's range is year 2023, it calls this directly. So year 2023, and it calls this. I'm currently on, if I go to season stats, the 2023 season. So these are all the teams that we've played in 2023. This is M3. These are all the players that were on my team that played during the 2023 season. So if I were to go here, I go back to 2025, get this and change that to say LSU, and we go back to dump, you'll see now it's got the 2025's teams. Then this is every single player that has ever played where the name, B2. So the season is what's selected in K2. So that's season. So that's in the season stat, the selected season from the stat, and the selected team. So this is every single player that played in 2025 against LSU. Again, it's a little bit complicated, but you don't have to know that it works. I'm just explaining it just in case anybody is interested. This one is every single player. It goes to case 6. So I have Air Force selected in all-time stats. This is every single player that's ever played against Air Force on Tulane. And then I'll go into these a little bit more later, but these are pretty much every team we've played by season and every single player that's played for us by season. But, with all that, we're done with, going through the sheet. And I can now get to making your own sheet. So making your own sheet, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go up to File, and you're going to want to make a copy of this. And get rid of that copy. You can really name it whatever you do, but if you want to go with my naming scheme, SimCFB, for example, let's say we're going to do Georgia records. Make a copy. So it loads up. I can close that. Loads up. It takes a bit of time, but you know, obviously it still looks like mine, but that's the way it is. You know, because it just has all of my stats and it's just a direct copy. The first thing you're going to want to do when you make a copy is you're going to want to change the conference. So I went and I did it beforehand just to make it faster. But what I'm doing is from your conference, I go over here and Georgia plays in the SEC. So SEC has 16 teams. Georgia's one of them, so 15 other teams. There we go. We take the 15 teams from the conference and they're pasted in here. Then what we did is in 2023 we had realignment so that we match, what the same looks like now. If you look at the SEC in 2023, that was pre-realignment. So, you bring that in, and there you go. There's your old conference. Forgot to describe this actually in the other one, but these over here is all of your conference games, and it automatically pulls from the new conference or the old conference, depending on if the season is before or after 2023. And this is all the non-conference games played. And again, it does, if it's before 2023, it'll pull from here. And if it's after 2023, it'll pull from here. So once you do that, you have your conference set up. You can go to Raw Individual and get your stuff set up. So what you're going to want to do is delete all these rows. You could just go in here and backspace and clear it. But there is a bunch of formulas running. Not too many, like 3. But for the sake of it, you could either get rid of all of these different, all the ones, but keep the formulas, which is the completion percentage, field goal percentage, extra point percentage, punt average, total points, and the hidden total points. Or just easier, you go in, you delete all the rows. So raw individual is now gone. And then you go into raw team, and you don't want to. You could delete all the rows here too, but what you want to do is get rid of all of these. Not the opponent total yards. That's calculated by itself. I'm actually, there's another thing I got to change on the original, which will be done by the time this video comes out. Have it so that when there's no stats showing there, it's blank. So, again, from here you go in, you have all the formulas still, doing their thing. They're just updated now for what row it is. So you fill in your stats. So for Georgia, they would start first game, season 2021 against whoever they played, name of their quarterback. And you don't have to do it in the order that I do it for, like I always put quarterback, running back, fullback, wide receivers, and then I go by number of tackles, right? So, um, you don't have to do it that way. It's just, I always do it the same way just to have. And you fill out your stats there. Then again, you go in and you fill out your team stats. Very, very simple. Once you once you replace your conference in your old conference, you've pretty much done all of the back end stuff you need to do. The only other thing to do is to go in and change the colors. So they're not Tulane, they're Georgia. You're going to change that to Georgia. You're going to make it a bit smaller so that it all fits. And it's going to be all caps. And you're going to realize that's not Georgia's logo. You'll get rid of that. You'll replace, and you'll put Georgia's logo in there. We'll go over to this website. You'll see the hex code for Georgia. For the Bulldogs red is this red here. And the hex code for their black is, the pitch black. So you'll go over here and you'll say, do that. And there, we'll do the black. We'll change the text to red so that it's the Georgia colors. And you'll go through and you'll do all that. The thing that I'm going to show you, and you're going to update these. So instead of AAC, it's going to say SEC. And they're going to put in all their stuff there. The only thing there is on all of these, so every under, so the way that it's set up on these, it's a bit hard to explain, so bear with me for a second. It has, text. So you take this text and this, and we want the background black. We want the text red, and the background here can be black. But the way that I have it is that if it's empty, then it's going to go in and conditional forwarding, it's called. So I go over here. So if it's empty, I have it as green for Tulane. So I just changed that to black, and all the empty cells now will be black by default. But you still got to go, and that's because that's what I'm having as the base color. You still got to go in and set the colors. So this black with red, and here, this is where the rushing touchdowns, total touchdowns, it's that part. And below it is where you have the actual stats. So you got to change this to white, even though it won't show up because it's empty right now. If I go over to my sheet, I have this shown up as white. If I change it to say green, it'll be green. But if it's empty for whatever reason, if I change this back to white, say, it's empty for whatever reason, then it goes back to green. So that's one of the, sneaky, there's a couple, I guess you can call them sneaky color changes you have to do. So that's one of them. And again, season stats, same thing. It's just, you do the same thing you do on all-time stats. It just kind of takes a while to do it all. And then with points, you're going to want to go and get your thing done the same way. But again, I have the background for an active player blue because that's, one of Tulane's colors. For uh, for Georgia, you're probably going to want to do it red. And I got rid of all the players. So I'm going to bring back all those stats. So give me a second to get everything back the way it should be. So since I'm not going through and doing all that stuff, just pretend for a second that this is completely decked out to look like Georgia. Everything is the correct color and black and black background with red text. All right. Well, I can just do this on mine to show, for example. If you go to career, say I want this to be, black, or let's just say gray. So I do that. So I change that to gray, but that doesn't automatically do it. What I got to do is go into here, conditional formattings, and all of this is already done. I just got to go in here, pick that gray, and I do it here, pick that gray. That's the color I want the highlight to be. And some of them, with most of them, you can just go on the first one, but like, say here, this is caught in the middle, so it stops here. So, down here, you got the gray, and up here, you got the gray. And, for individual season, and this is another one that's separated, but for individual season records, individual game records, team records, you do the same thing to change those from blue to really whatever color you want. And just undo that all real quick because again, this is my sheet. But it's not difficult. It's just going through everything. It's going to take a little bit of time. It's just one of those things to set it up and make it all pretty. Now we're going to get to the last part. This is what happens at the end of a season. So the sheet doesn't, with all the formulas, it's doing all this stuff in the backhand, in the back end. It's getting all this stuff automatically, but it doesn't actually know what it's doing. It doesn't know that it's trying to separate things by season. So you have to do separating by season for it. Say season ends right now. 2026 starts. I'm playing. My next game is against Temple. So let's say 2026 season starts against Temple. And, let's just grab all of this. We'll just grab this, copy it down. 58, 2026, Temple. Write that down. So the sheet is going to freak out a little bit when you first do that. First of all, now that it's 2026, I'm going to change this to 2026. Everything's going to break a little bit, especially, I guess, no. I expected it to break a little bit, but it didn't, so that's cool. 2026 is now an option here, and you can click on it, and it's going to have no stats right now. This is where it really breaks because it doesn't know. Like I said, it can only do what we've told it, and we haven't told it what to do when it gets to 2026. So we got to do. Maybe I should have practiced this before I did it, but we take here and we go here because this is the 2025 one. Copy this, move it over, 2020, and we put it in the next row. We change this 2025 to 2026. There. And then we do the same thing for here. Copy this, put it into 2026, and we change that 5 to a 6. And pretty much this is now every unique team. So every team, and it only shows each team once that we've played where the team column, where the season column is 2026, lists every team. This is the same thing, list every single player where the season column is 2026. Now, the main thing though is it doesn't know to call those right now. So what you got to do is from X2 down to X18. And again, for whatever season, for 2027, it'll be Y. For 2028, it'll be Z. What you want to do is go to this drop down here. So what you want to do is highlight this. And you're going to go over to this drop down here. You're going to go to Manage Names Ranges. And you're going to type in for the names range year and then the season. So this is 2026. So year 2026. You press done. And it fills it in right there. So then you're going to go onto here. You're going to go down, and really it depends. For these, I always do deeper is better. I go down to 63. You can go down even further than that. The more players you have, the further down you're going to have to go. But I do that. I highlight that, and we'll go down to 63. Add names range. We're going to go players 2026. It has to be spelled exactly like that. I think the capitalization has to be the same. Yeah, the capitalization has to be the same because it's calling that specific thing. And now with there, it's got it. And just like that, your sheet is set up and ready for the 2026 CFB season. So, like I said, there's not too much that you have to do. But this is one of those things. If you go over and you look at individual seasons, you'll see 2026 season, these stats are here, and it's now the 2026 season being highlighted. Like, a lot of the stuff gets done in the background, but it's like, you don't know what you have to do until it's shown to you, and this is pretty much what that is. It's very simple once you know what you're doing, but if you don't know how to set up the new season, you're never going to figure that out. But with that, we're all done. And this video was all about the CFB sheet, but I also have a sheet for college basketball and NBA. And I'm working on it. I haven't gotten too far yet, but I'm working on filling out my NFL one. This one needs to be updated a bit more to be in line with the features of the CFB one. But, I'm working on getting the stats up to date there. So, and when baseball season starts, when the first season for the baseball sim starts, I'll make a college and professional baseball one. I'll probably make a college and professional hockey one. It'll take some time. I'm gonna have to see what the box scores look like and go based off of that. But you know, the essence of the sheets are very much the same. The back end is it. The only thing that really changes from sheet to sheet is the colors, and then when the sports changes, it's the stats that are being tracked. But everything else just kind of does its, just does its thing. And with that, you now know how to use the sheet. Also, I probably should have brought this up, but dump is usually hidden. You should hide that. It's a bunch of back end stuff. You know, there's no point in anyone who's just viewing it to see it. So make sure to hide that sheet. But yeah, that's everything you got to know. We're coming up on just under an hour. I packed a lot of information into this. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me. I'm more than happy to help people set up their own thing. And maybe one day I'll have to make another one of these to go over some things that I might have missed or things I had later. But as of today, which is March 29th of 2025, about 10 a.m., that is a complete comprehensive guide on how to interact with this in any way that you want to. So you can now go and make your own sheets and use this in any way that you want, or you know go look at anyone's stats. But yeah, I look forward to seeing more people using these and just tracking their stats. I think it's amazing that people can pull up stats and say, this is a career record, or this is the most passing yards a quarterback has thrown for me. I think it adds so much to the sim having these records, and this is how, at least for now, this is how they're tracked. This is how I track them. This is how some other people that are doing it track them. So if you want to get involved and you want to track it, you get, this is pretty much how to do it. It's going to take a while to catch up. It takes a while, but if you just kind of sit down, put your head down and get to it, you'll be done soon enough. And the main thing, the main motivation I always have to do it is like, if you put it off, it's just going to take longer to do. Once you catch up, each week you put in your stats. But if you wait, another season to do it, then it's just you got another season of games you got to put in before you're completely caught up with where the sim is. But yeah, like I said, I'm pretty much just that's the sheet. That's everything I've got for you. So I look forward to seeing more people using these sheets. Again, if you have any questions, if you're overwhelmed or anything, feel free to DM me. I'm always open to answer questions and help people set these up in any way. Yeah, like I said, multiple times already. I can't wait to see more of these pop up. So that's it for me. I don't know when the next time I'll be posting a video is, but probably going to be sheet related. So yeah, uh, happy stat tracking.